Well, reports indicate that Salah al-Awariya, a key Hamas leader, was killed in an explosion outside Beirut in Lebanon. Israeli officials have so far not taken credit for the bombing, which marks the first killing of a Hamas leader outside the West Bank and Gaza since the October 7th terrorist attacks. What will come as a result of this? Is this an escalation? Joining me now from Jerusalem to discuss this is Chris Mitchell, Middle East Bureau Chief for CBN News. Chris, welcome back to Washington Watch. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Tony. Great to be with you again.
Now, give us an understanding of what took place yesterday. Of course, earlier today in Iran, we had a blast as well. No one's taken credit for that as of yet. Are things heating up there in the Middle East right now?
Well, I think they are, Tony. I think after the October 7th massacre, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the Hamas top leaders were dead men walking. So this attack, presumably by Israel, but they're not taking responsibility, is the beginning of that kind of process. Back in 1972, Golda Meir, the Israeli Prime Minister then, pledged that all the perpetrators of the Olympic massacre in Munich would be dead. That was called the wrath of God. There's no name for this particular, presumably, attempt by Israel leadership to take out all the top Hamas leadership. But it does raise the stakes here, Tony. For weeks now, many people have been saying that what you have to look at is not only just the war in Gaza with Hamas, but also in Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a much stronger military force, one of the top armies actually in the Middle East. And so they have maybe 150,000 rockets, many of them precision guided. So if there's an escalation in the north, partly because of this assassination, that could really raise the stakes here dramatically here in the Middle East.
Have you seen any movement there in Israel to suggest that there's preparations being made for an escalation?
Well, the IDF IDF spokesman has said that they're ready for any escalation on any front. He didn't mention the assassination in particularly, but he did make that comment, which presumably sends a signal that to Hezbollah and its leader Hassan Nasrallah that to warn them about any escalation. So there are just no particular escalations or readiness by the IDF that you can identify. But that statement, I think, says enough to tell that the IDF will be prepared for any escalation by Hezbollah on the northern border.
Could that explain some of the troops that are being pulled out of Gaza being positioned elsewhere?
Well, it could be. I mean, they do say that there's 5 battalions that have been taken out of Gaza, but the fighting does continue in the north of Gaza. Most of that has been taken over by the IDF, and the fighting remains in the south. It's not necessarily exactly clear if those 5 battalions are going to be redeployed up in the north. There is a heavy military presence by the IDF up there right now, and presumably, if they need to, they'll send more troops up there if necessary.
So Chris Mitchell, give us a sense of the kind of the atmosphere there in Israel now. Is there a sense of victory looming? I mean, are the expectations being met?
Well, so far, I think the IDF is going methodically and cautiously throughout Gaza. Tony, I'm amazed to see the video coming out of Gaza day by day, the network of tunnels, the amount of weapons, not only in schools and mosques and in the kindergartens, but almost in any building that you can find there. I think there's a resolute feeling here in Israel that it will take months, and that's what Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said. I think there's a resoluteness that they will do what they can, whether it takes however long it takes. Now, that involves whether or not the U.S. and other international parties are going to put pressure on Israel to stop that. But I think they want to make sure that there's safety on the southern border.
Well, let's talk about that international pressure and where the United States stands. I mean, United States, vetoing the resolution in the United Nations a couple of weeks ago, still standing firm, wavering just a bit. But Is there a sense that they're going to be able to go the distance, or are they committed, regardless of what the international community says, to finish the course?
I think the Israeli leadership is decided to go finish the course. I was watching an earlier documentary on Menachem Begin, and the Begin doctrine says that they won't allow any neighbor to have weapons of mass destruction to be able to eliminate the Jewish state. And that would include, if you can take all of the ring of fire that Iran has put around Israel right now, Gaza, Hezbollah, the militias in Iraq and Syria, as well as the Houthis down in Yemen, I think Israel is decided to go ahead and go the route, even against pressure by the United States or the international community.
Chris Mitchell, is there a sense that this is the time that they may not have the opportunity later, and if they don't, while they're already raising, the ire of some in the international community, they might as well go forward and eliminate all of the surrounding threats?
That's a big question, Tony. It remains to be seen. I think they've made the tactical decision right now to eliminate Hamas on the southern border before they reopen a major front in the northern border with Hezbollah, even though the fighting's been going on for weeks. I mean, it is a war, but it's a low-scale war, and it seems like both parties, Hezbollah and Israel, want to maintain that low scale, at least for now. But whether or not Israel's going to make a decision to go and eliminate all of its enemies, whether or not it has the capability to do it all at the same time remains to be seen. But I think this is what happened on October 7th, I think, was a game changer for Israeli leadership and Israelis to do what they need to do to preserve the future of the Jewish state, because they feel this is an existential threat against the Jewish people.
Chris Mitchell, I really appreciate you staying up late and joining us there from Jerusalem. I do want to ask another question about the sense of support that Israel is receiving from the evangelical community in the United States in particular. Is there a sense that the Christians are standing with Israel?
I think that's one of the stories of this war, Tony. I think the fact that evangelical Christians have been coming out so strongly in support of Israel, that includes CBN's Gordon Robertson. Franklin Graham was here recently. So was Governor Huckabee, Joe Rosenberg. Many have come here to show support, and I think that really is a really morale booster for Israelis and the Jewish people around the world.
Final question for you, Chris Mitchell. How can evangelicals be praying?
Pray for wisdom for the leaders here in Israel, for the military leaders, political leaders, and for Israelis. Pray for comfort. Isaiah chapter 40 says, "Comfort, comfort ye my people." This has been such a shock, a traumatic shock. Somebody has said most all Israelis are suffering from PTSD, surrounded, and so that Christian support is invaluable, and prayer for comfort and wisdom at this time is invaluable as well, and for the peace of Jerusalem.
We will certainly encourage our listeners and viewers to do just that. And as always, Chris Mitchell, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be praying for you and your family as well.